Hey guys, back with another great video about Battle for Zendikar. Got to go to the pre-release events, couple of those, couple tournaments, and two-headed giant and all that, so I got a pretty good idea of what cards are really powerful, what cards are overrated. Now, obviously, limited is a lot different than standard, but it's close enough that you can tell what cards just drastically fail, look good as an idea, or work perfectly. So decided to make a little deck description video of some combos I thought go together well in one of the most obvious combos in the set, White Allies. Now if you've been playing Magic for a while, you know that usually the sort of between the lines suggested deck that they're obviously recommending somebody could build from a set is usually just a mediocre deck, real mid-level, powerful but cheap to build, sort of like elves or well, you could go way back to all the different sets. Like an elf deck, it was doing okay, but it wouldn't win you the world tournaments. So I kind of feel the same way about allies, but it's a little bit more powerful this time around. And once again, you get most of the cards from the same set, but I left out some of the really creative things you could do with older cards that are still left in standard as of October 2nd. Speaking of October 2nd, that'll be the first Friday Night Magic where you're allowed to use these cards, so I thought, hey, I'm going to make this and hopefully a couple more videos that tell you some of the best combos, some of the best sort of deck ideas, not precise deck builds, because I don't like net decks, and I encourage creativity and, adaptation to your exact situation of playing, but this is definitely the first one and the most obvious one in the set. The first and most obvious is Cliffside Lookout. Now, it's a 1/1 for 1, so early game, great, you've got a creature out on turn 1, you might get a free swing or two, or have a chump blocker in case of emergencies, but then late game, hey, it still triggers Rally, it still is dirt cheap to cast. And then that ability that doesn't require a tap is absolutely absurd in the late game. I mean, 5 cost is very reasonable for the late game, and you can use it as a threat. I mean, they know it's there, they know you can activate it at any time that you have 5 mana, you can use it defensively and offensively. This just has to be in the deck. The next and most obvious one is Expedition Envoy. It also costs 1, but it's a 2/1, so it's even better early game. It's still a great trigger late game, and if you boost it a little bit, it's still a great swinger even late game. So, or I should say attacker, not swinger. That sounds a little different. Next is the Core Castigator. I really like this one because it's only 2 for a 3/1, and then he has the really particular ability of not being able to be blocked by Scions. That's nice if they're just dumping Scions to speed to like a turn 5 Eldrazi win. So he's going to just hurt them and hurt them and hurt them. I mean, 3 damage cannot be underestimated. It is really, really, really powerful. Now, I really like Core because he only costs 2, so late game, if you drop him in, there you go, he just triggered Rally, and yet he's still a threat, he's still a great attacker, and he leaves enough mana on the table to scare the crap out of your enemies when you swing. So those are the 3 main just pure allies. Now, the great thing about White, and this is why I think White has the best allies personally, is because all the rest have Rally. So speaking of Rally, let's start with a really bad one. This just did not work in my blue-white deck that I used at the pre-release. It doesn't keep them tapped down. That's the number one flaw. It costs 5 and it's only a 3/4. It isn't flying, and all it does for Rally is tap 1 creature. So you might get past, I guess you could say it might win the game if you were to drop in 2 or 3 allies. It's not like they have haste, so you're probably still not going to win that swing. It's just not good enough, and you do not want it in your opening hand. So that's one of the very few ones I rejected. Moving on to the other really expensive Rally ally, we're going to Hero of Goma Fada. Now here we go, not only is it 4/3 instead of 3/4 like Core, so it can actually hit a little bit, but the Rally effect is all creatures you control gain indestructible. It's not even all allies, it's just all creatures. Now I wouldn't really mix in much for other creatures, I would go pure allies because you're going to need to trigger it as often as possible, but this is a 5 cost Rally effect right here. I mean, this could be an enchantment and it would still be worth it. If every single time you swing, because every single turn you bring in an ally, which is reasonable, they can't win. I mean, it's almost not fair. So I really, really, really like this one, and the only problem is that I don't think any allies have flash, and I don't think there's any way to give them flash, so you can't use that defensively. Now, because of that 5 cost, I would definitely cut it down to 3. 3 seems to be the magic number for expensive but good cards that you don't want in your opening hand but aren't legendary. So moving down to a little bit cheaper of one, we've got the McKindy Patrol. Their rally effect is that all creatures you control gain vigilance until end of turn. That's like a free swing with a free block. So if you're sort of having to block and it's preventing you from attacking and you've got a little standoff going, here's a free swing. Now it doesn't make them any bigger, but with him only costing 3, even if you leave him out of the battlefield and wait a turn, you could have a full set of 6 or 7 mana already out and be threatening the use of an instant, even though maybe it's not in your deck, but, you know, Celestial Flare, Smite the Monstrous, Gideon's Reproach, they could all be in your deck and nobody would know it. So even if they are, even if they're not, you've got a full set of mana and, oh, now they're all vigilant, so just swing blind and they're going to be terrified of you. Luckily, it even gets cheaper from here. We've got a 3-cost Lantern Scout. Very, very, very good creature. It's a 3/2, so it can really have some firepower. It is itself an ally, of course, and its rally ability is that all creatures gain lifelink until end of turn. That will prevent you from losing the game. I mean, you could combine this with the Vigilance one, swing, get a whole bunch of life no matter what they do, and then still be able to block. And then you gain so much life, typically, that you could just let their attack through once. So this is so powerful for turning the tide of a battle. My only problem was that if you brought out multiple, they only gain lifelink once, but that's a drawback with almost all of the rally effects. But wait, there's more. It only gets better from there. For a mere 2 mana, you get a 2/2 Ally Soldier. So fun if you want to build a half soldiers deck. Their rally ability is that all creatures you control gain first strike until end of turn. Now, granting first strike, the best way to do it is blind and while blocking, because then you can triple block, rack up some ridiculous 10 first strike, and just kill whatever's coming at you. It's like an asymmetric board wipe. That's the best way to do it. The second best way to do it is that they know it's coming, they know it's on the battlefield, they know you might be able to trigger it, and then trigger it while they're attacking. They saw it coming, but I don't know, maybe they thought they could get past it, or forgot about it, or thought you'd forget about it, or thought you couldn't trigger it. So at least it's not a direct activated ability. So that puts it at about medium level. Then the worst type is it just has first strike and they know about it, so they're probably already trying to find a way around it. So at least this comes in right in the middle. So I absolutely love this, because a 2/2 for 2 that's just an ally would be perfect, and then the rally ability is one of the better ones. I mean, it beats some of the more expensive cards. So this I would definitely put 4 of in the deck. Now we're going to move on to the side cards that I think complement the deck nicely, because as you may have been noticing so far, we're not quite at a 60-card deck. I like to just fill the rest with just creature removal, but a good alternative is obviously the Fortified Rampart. It only costs 2, it's a 0/6 defender, so you're never going to swing with it, you can't boost it, you can't do any funny tricks with it, but a 0/6 defender is fantastic. I mean, you get it out on turn 2, they aren't going to be able to get through anytime soon, and you get it out late game, it's still big enough to stop most things. Now, you could actually use another card to boost it a little bit higher, and it could stop an Eldrazi for a turn. So, definitely a great card. I think it's great early or late, and it's a great complement to your line, because it definitely allows you to swing with your allies. That is what you want to do with Rally, is whenever Rally triggers, you don't want to be stuck saying, oh, I can't attack or all my people will die, or they're going to counterswing for just as much as I hit them for. So this is fantastic, and it's sort of redundant with granting them vigilance because it preserves defenders. So a really, really good card if you want to play cautious and a little bit slower. Speaking of that one card that does that, Lithomancer's Focus. It's the perfect anti-Eldrazi card. It's great for just a +2/+2 ambush by itself. I mean, it's an instant and it costs 1. So I would contemplate putting it in my main board, but it's definitely a sideboard card as well. So this is what you need when you swing with an ally and they think, well, he's just swinging because you granted them lifelink, I can block them. And then you take out one of their bigger creatures. So the other thing is a lot of the creatures I named aren't really that big, and there isn't a white ability that makes them larger, unfortunately. So this is the perfect complement if you want to ambush somebody and protect against those nasty Eldrazi. Now the next complementary card is Knight of the White Orchid. It's another 2/2 for 2. It's a human knight, so not actually an ally, doesn't have rally, but he has first strike by himself. So if you were to grant him lifelink, great. If you were to grant him indestructible, fantastic. So he's a really good attacker, and early game he can really give you the lead. He basically, if land is 1 in 3 cards in your deck and you need to get to 3 or 4 or 5 land to really get going, he saves you technically 3 turns. So he puts a plains directly onto the battlefield, and it isn't tapped. You can use it immediately. So I'd say the devotion is great, but that's already dead and buried after the last block cycled out. So other than that, he's just great. I mean, he's the best non-ally creature that I would put in there. And it's a shame we lost Fabled Hero, or he would have that title. Next up is another favorite of mine. It's Defiant Strike. It does only cost 1 and it draws a card, so it replaces itself. So it helps to accelerate your deck, and it's somewhat likely to either put a land in your hand, which is great, or put an ally in your hand, which is even better. If you're playing the type of deck I'm planning to build, it'll put a removal spell in your deck, or in your hand. Whoops. But not the best ambush, not the best finisher. I mean, if you just happen to need to do 1 more damage, great. But no defense boost. I just like that it replaces itself. There's no heroic anymore, so it's not the greatest card. But if you're just looking for a fast deck with really, really low casting cost, this is the card I would go to. But a little bit better of an option is Retreat to Emeria. Now, you might notice that that is actually a landfall card, but it's not like you won't be putting lands into the battlefield. So the first effect that you can choose is unbelievable. You can put in a 1/1 white core ally creature token onto the battlefield. Now, tokens are fantastic because first, you didn't have to pay for the effect. You got a creature without actually paying for it, and then the creature itself that you didn't have to pay for triggers rally. So that is important. Now the other effect is even better. Creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Now if you dropped in an Evolving Wilds, you could trigger landfall in the middle of combat. So you could pop that Evolving Wild right when they're choosing defenders, and then ta-da, your creatures get +1/+1. Or you could use it to trigger rally in the middle of combat, which is unbelievably hard to do. So between the two of those, I just think it's fantastic. Now obviously you got to use a little bit lower fetch lands, but the casting cost of this deck is so low you could get away with it. So I think that's the perfect card to go with allies that isn't technically an ally or a rally card. Now, a little bit better alternative to Defiant Strike, I think, is Angelic Gift. You get a lot more bang for your buck out of it. It doesn't boost the creature, but it does grant any of your creatures flying, which few, if any, of the white allies are actually flying. So when it enters the battlefield, you draw a card, so the card automatically replaces itself. You want to shrink your deck and speed your deck. So if you just pulled a land, great, you might be able to trigger landfall on retreat. You might get a land out so you can double cast an ally. You might be able to just outnumber them with creatures by drawing either land or creatures. So drawing a card is very important in this deck. You don't want to be top decking because the allies by themselves individually are not that powerful. And anytime that you can put 2 in your hand, 1 from your draw step, 1 from a card, you're going to keep the ally, or I should say the rally chain going a lot longer. But the best part is the enchanted creature has flying, so you might just be able to repeatedly fly over the top of them, while you're also granting lifelink, granting vigilance. Now you can use it as a blocker. Now you have a flying blocker. This is just such a perfect card to go with the deck. Now I have to warn you, unfortunately I have bad news. This next card is absolutely perfect for the deck. It takes the deck and just doubles the overall power of it. It's absolutely unstoppable. Because of that, it is right now sitting at $40 a card, and you would really need 3 or 4 of them in the deck. I don't think 2 would cut it with how unbelievably important it is, and how the second that you play it, it's already good. So you probably already know what I'm talking about. It's Gideon, ally of Zendikar. So he comes out with 4 loyalty, and for -4, yeah, the amount he comes out with, you can get an emblem with creatures you control get +1/+1. Forever. There is no way to remove an emblem. So that would really help the allies because they're not that big. But then his 0 is bring out a 2/2 White Knight ally, so he's an ally drop every single turn, forever. It's not even a -1, you could use it forever. And then he can block himself. But then the perfect thing is that he costs 4, so you probably already have blockers for him. So now you've got another potential chump blocker that you don't really need, and he just triggered Rally. But even better, +1 until end of turn, he becomes a 5/5 human soldier ally, which does not trigger Rally. He was already on the battlefield. But he's got Indestructible, and it says he's still a Planeswalker. I'm not sure how that's relevant because he's indestructible, so no spell can affect him. But prevent all damage that would be dealt to him this turn. So he's indestructible and has damage prevented to him this turn. It seems redundant, but I think it's hinting at spells that'll be in the next set. So he's pretty darn hard to stop, and the best thing is, most people don't realize this, I did check, you could bring him out immediately, hit him with a 0, so you've got a blocker. Okay, so they swing at you, kill the blocker, whatever, maybe the blocker's still on the field preferably, but then you +1 him, so now he's at 5. Okay, wait a turn. Now -4 him, he's still at 1. Now +1, +1, +1, and you could -4 him again, all your creatures get +1, +1 2 times. So emblems do stack. They are not considered legendary because they don't have to be classified because they reside in the command zone, not on the battlefield, but that's a little technical. So just keep in mind, you could bring out the emblem twice. In fact, if you bring out one Gideon, self-destruct him immediately, or get the first one killed, but you get an emblem out first, you could bring out another Gideon and drop out another emblem. So it's like every time you feel like paying 4 mana, you guarantee that your creatures get +1, +1. Even if they tried to kill him with some sort of instant kill spell or something I can't even think of because Ruinous Path is a sorcery, you could still, in response, use his activated ability first. Or do it on the stack so it resolves first, I should say. So he is absolutely perfect for the deck. I mean, he's a guaranteed rally trigger. He's a really good striker himself. And he could just be used as sort of an enchantment that can't be destroyed. I mean, you could not ask for a better card for this deck. I just really wish it was cheaper because this whole deck is probably at about $10 so far. Even the rares that are in here, which is like 1 or 2 cards, are considered really, really low value right now. That's why I like to describe sort of mid to high level decks because they tend to not cost $300. But I think you could pull it off without Gideon. It's just it'll always be in the back of your mind that the deck would be twice as good with him. Now another consideration that sort of speaks for itself, even though the deck idea is getting very large, is Ghostly Sentinel. And I mention it because yes, it costs 5, but it is a natural flyer with Vigilance. You don't have to grant it anything. So if they started killing off your allies or used a -2/-2 blanket black spell, that's a new thing. It's a really overpriced Drown in Sorrows. This won't die, and it'll just keep hitting them. I mean, I won a whole bunch of matches at the pre-release with this, and it is really, really, really hard with cards that are in Standard right now to stop a 3/3 flyer. And then he can block. So he can take out tokens, he could take out Scions. I mean, he's really, really, really nice. I don't like that he costs 5, so I wouldn't necessarily put 4 in, but if you get multiple, the game is just over, because they typically won't be playing flyers with any popular deck that's out right now. So he's worth mentioning because it is a white deck and he does work. And finally, a warning about the ally-specific land. It's an individual rare, I guess you would say colorless land, but it's non-basic as well. You tap it for 1 colorless mana, and you can cast it on, or spend it on anything. Add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool and spend it only to cast an ally spell, which it's almost impossible to build an all allies deck unless you go with 2 colors. Actually, I think it is impossible. So it's a color fixer for a 100% ally deck, but I looked at all the 2 color combinations and they're just really not that good. I mean, the best you can get is black, and you get some really good vampires, but the concept kind of starts to fall apart, and some of the rally effects aren't as good in black, so I think mono white is the way to go with rally, and then you don't have to worry about expensive dual lands or any kind of lands that lose you life, or cheaper alternative lands. It's just much simpler. But then we come to the point of this land, which is that you pay 1, tap it, so you couldn't have used the mana from the land itself, unfortunately. Then you have to sacrifice it just to return a target ally you control to its owner's hand. So if they're trying to kill off one of your allies, none of which are all that important in the first place, you could bounce it back to your hand. So if your favorite rally effect is getting stomped, you could bring it back. But then you're one land short, so it's going to be awfully hard to recast it. You already had to tap a different land to sack this one. You couldn't tap this one to pull a mana ahead of time before sacrificing it. And then you have to recast the spell. So it really isn't the greatest card. I would maybe put it in just because almost nothing costs double white, but I wouldn't be that excited about it. I guess you could maybe just mess with their head and they'll think you're going to do it whenever they cast a kill spell, but really not the greatest land to go with it, and the fact that it's a rare means it might not be that easy to get your hands on. So besides that land, there is only 3 more spells that I briefly mentioned before that I thought would make this deck just a little bit faster, and fast is always good. The classic Celestial Flare, whether they're attacking or blocking, you make them sacrifice their choice of creatures. So they never choose the most powerful, most important one, so I don't absolutely love that spell, and it's double white, but it's still really funny. And they tend to only attack with, well, not all of their line of creatures, so that could be devastating. It might work, it might not. You could definitely sideboard it and only play it if they're playing, non-swarms of things. The other one is definitely Gideon's Reproach. Deals 4 damage to target attacking or blocking creatures, so that is your choice of target, and most creatures do have 4 or less toughness, so you could blow away almost anything with that spell. I absolutely love it. Now, the best secret ability of this card, well, not really secret ability, but the best way to use it is to, let's say they're swinging with a 6/6 Eldrazi and you block with a creature that only has 2 attack power. So you just stop the creature for 1 turn. They're just going to keep on swinging, wiping out your allies, which would really, really be bad. But, oh, look, Gideon's Reproach, second main phase, or even during end of combat phase. That's a real phase, by the way, look it up. All you have to do is tack on 4 more damage, and he's got 6 damage, because damage is not removed until the very, very, very end of the turn. So, 2 damage from your creature, 4 damage from the spell, and they're toast for 2 mana. Very easy to have them not suspect much is going on when you have 2 mana as well, so... plus, they're the ones swinging, so who cares? They'll usually swing with a giant Eldrazi if they think they've got the game. That's what I noticed. And next, of course, is Smite the Monstrous, another fantastic, fantastic card. It does cost 4, so it's more of like an emergency card, but you can just hold it in your hand, make them nervous that you've got a card, and with good reason, because it only blows up creatures with power 4 or greater. You really, with a whole bunch of allies out, wouldn't have to worry about, like, let's say an 0/8 defender, for example, because, it has power less than 4. You can't get it out of the way with this spell, but you've probably got 5 or 6 allies on the battlefield, so who cares? Some of them might even have flying. It's just... It's just to get rid of Eldrazi, pretty much. You could also kill Hydras, you could kill some dragons with it, so it's really important. You should at least have it in your sideboard. Okay, if you watched my last video, you already know what's coming. Take a guess what card I'm going to add at the last second that isn't even in this set, that I think is the most important card in the whole deck, and pretty much any other deck. Yep, Sword of the Animist. Not only does your equipped creature get +1/+1, which is a nice little side bonus, but every single time you swing with Hello Rally effects, you could swing every turn most likely, you get to drop in a basic land, and it's only 2 to equip, and 2 to get out, so all you have to do is move it around from ally to ally to ally. They get just a little bit bigger, which is great for defense and offense, and every single time you swing with it, which maybe it has vigilance, hey, that works, you get to go get a land to drop it in, which means anything you draw, you will be able to play, because you'll just be dropping in lands constantly. You could actually drop in a land, then drop in another land during combat, and just drain your whole deck of lands, which is the other important part, because you really want to just get lands out, not too many of them, but hey, I'm not going to complain about having 15 planes out by turn 10, but then you'll be pulling nothing but allies, because there will be practically no lands left in your entire deck, so it's just ally spell, ally spell, ally spell. So it speeds up rally, speeds up the amount of aggro you have. It's just the perfect card to have. I'm yet to find a deck that it doesn't fit in, because who doesn't want lands on the field, and who doesn't want lands out of their deck? I mean, it's just absolutely perfect. Plus it triggers landfall. So that's about it for the Allies deck. I named way more cards than you could ever fit in a deck, but like I said, I encourage people to build their own deck, find out what works the best, and more than anything, just base it on whatever everybody else is playing, because that's the fastest way to win. Now, if you're about to say, oh, Allies are weak, you shouldn't have wasted your time describing Allies and breaking it down like this, because it'll never be at the Grand Prix. I don't care. You're watching the wrong video, you're watching the wrong channel. I don't care about net deckers. I don't care about what the top decks in meta are. I just don't care what's going on at a tournament I'm not going to. I care what's going on at FNM. I'm not saying I don't like winning. I mean, this is a powerful deck. I probably will win with it. But I don't care if it's not the world-class deck. I'm not sitting here trying to predict the world-class decks. So I just think this would be a really fun deck, really effective, very easy to run, very new player friendly, and if you play it expertly as a very experienced player, you really could win FNM with it. I regularly go to an FNM that has about 40 to 50 people, so I know it takes a pretty good deck to beat those net deckers, unfortunately, but this stands a reasonable chance of doing it, and the number one thing I like about it is, besides Gideon, the deck's practically free. I mean, almost every single card in here is common or uncommon, and not a very valuable uncommon. So you could just trade for these like nobody's business, or just pick them up as singles and support your local stores. So it's a great deck all around, fun to play, supports local gaming, and it could win you some small tournaments. So go out there and beat everybody up with Allies.